And because of who we are and what we represent and what we do hopefully at a very high level, we were asked a while back to be involved in a commissioning project. And it was with Dave Knox. Where'd you go? Oh, there it is. Dave Knox with banddirector.com and Ken Amos. Ken is, where you at, Ken? There you are. Okay, Ken is the tuba player with, remind me. Empire Brass. I knew it was one of those brass groups. Empire Brass in Boston, right? Okay, and he also teaches at MIT, and he does the wind ensemble up here at Lynn University. So through Dave and Dwayne Hendon, who recommended us for this, bless Dwayne, but we got involved together, and I told Ken, let's write a march for middle school. Well, it became a little bit more than a middle school march, but it became a march. Not a typical march that you might think, like John Philip Sousa. But I'm going to invite Ken up here just for a brief moment to tell you about this piece. It's March of the Corn, which is named by Stephen back here. Stand up, Stephen. Stephen came up with a name. But I had some tie-ins to something else, and I think Ken might mention that too. Here's Ken.
Good evening. Wait, you haven't heard the piece yet. Yes, this was kind of a treat for me to come down and work with such a great band, and you never can predict where your work is going to take you. And of course, I grew up in Bermuda, and I've spent a lot of my life in the Boston area, and I had never heard of, well, I guess I had heard of Coral Springs, but I certainly hadn't heard of this school before, and so when I was contacted to write a commission for it, I said, sure, that sounds like fun. And I got on the phone with Neil, and he's very enthusiastic about everything and a lot of confidence about his group. And it wasn't until the second time I had come down to the school and worked with the students that one of my students in MIT, who I was just having a conversation with, said, oh yeah, I graduated from that school. A clarinet player by the name of Morrow had apparently gone to school here and then been playing with me up in the MIT Wind Ensemble for several years. So apparently, without me knowing, I had only been one person away from Neil Jenkins and the school for all this time. And I think the cellist, who's moonlighting as a percussionist back there, is actually looking to go to school at Boston Conservatory, where I also teach, next year. So it's amazing how small the music world is and how these connections can happen. And it would be rude of me not to mention actually the sponsorship which really made this connection happen, because there are very few things that can happen without financial support. Very few good things that can happen, except for maybe kids. But they cost money, but not to make. At least I don't remember getting a check for mine. But Capitol Music Festivals, when a band like this goes to play for, let's say, a presidential inauguration, or goes to Europe, a company like Capitol Music Festivals, they're the travel agency that sort of specializes in getting a large group like this from here to there. Bando shoes, when you see a band marching on a football field, usually they're wearing specialized shoes so that they can march without getting corns on their feet, pun intended. And Bando Shoes is a company that has given money to make this project happen, and they make shoes. Make Music, they make software for music educators to help them connect to their students, where they're using the internet and the students can have real contact one-on-one with their teachers through the internet. I know that sounds weird if you're old school where you want hands-on contact with a person, but this company has figured out a way to do it through their software called Smart Music. Besson and Buffet, they're instrument makers. Companies actually have to make these instruments. They don't have to give money to make projects like this happen, but they do. And Besson and Buffet is a company that makes these instruments and makes projects like this happen. Woodwind, Brasswind, they are a company that actually sells the instruments that the manufacturers make so that they get into the hands of these performers. Again, they make money off of selling instruments. They don't have to give money to projects like this, but they do, and we're grateful for that. DF Music, they specialize in making brass mouthpieces. For those of you who aren't musicians, they're the little doohickey that goes in between the brass instrument and the kisser on the brass player. Chop Saver, that's a lip balm for wind and brass players. For when they've done too much playing or maybe too much kissing, they can put this lip balm on and get an injection of vitamin E, and it makes your chops feel better.
And we go march in inauguration parade.
Oh yes, and when it's freezing cold and they have to stand out in the Washington weather for 2 hours longer than they're expected to, that lip balm comes in handy. Lynn University has also, the conservatory at Lynn University is also sponsored. And of course, banddirector.com, which allows someone in Japan to be getting up in the morning with their cup of coffee and watching right now over the internet. This next piece, yes, it's a children's march, and for those of you who have heard children's marches, you know they're generally light in character. But I always found that children, especially little children, are very free to readily express how they feel, for better or for worse. And much like the last piece by Tekeli showed the sort of different aspects of human nature, I think children kind of embody that honesty of human nature, where being childish really means being honest, and they will readily tell you when they're upset or when they're angry. And when I was telling the ensemble about this and how I was writing, how the piece starts off friendly and gets more sinister, I was telling them that I was thinking of different parts of literature that also do that. For instance, The Lord of the Flies, the book The Lord of the Flies, and certainly the movie Children of the Corn. And that's where the bassoonist stepped up and titled the piece, because the piece had no title. And so I thank him for that. But as you listen to this, you'll hear that it starts off very mild-natured, and then it turns. And probably many of you are parents in the audience. Maybe after the concert, you can share your experience of when your kids were younger, and maybe they had a moment where you turned their back and all of a sudden they grew horns and a tail. And I don't know if you've ever seen a child in a supermarket do the move where they start screaming and go limp, and you have to drag them through the supermarket, but that's the type of mood change that I've always wanted to see in middle school pieces, because middle schoolers kind of embody that sort of free will, and they take away the governor and really express what they're feeling at the moment. So this is March of the Corn, and I'd like to thank again Maestro Jenkins and Maestro Williams for helping the group prepare this piece. Thank you very much. Enjoy.